Barigani, what's the news for today? As we continue on our story on Black History Month, I want us to consider something different because I know this started off as Negro Achievement Week and we talked about great achievements of the Negro. But I think what it also must be is a call to action where we understand as many achievements that we've made, there's still so many gains that we've lost and so many things that need to be done. When you look at the great period of Reconstruction, I'm always considering how our ancestors must have felt. Here we are, wrongly imprisoned, and then we're emancipated, so-called emancipated. While people get freedom, they're still locked in different states of slavery through sharecropping, but also something called prison. And Michelle Alexander talks about this so well in her book, The New Jim Crow. And in The New Jim Crow, what she talks about is even though the rules change seemingly for our advantage, when the rules change, the goalposts are also moved. And so if you look at the great documentary by Ava DuVernay entitled 13, you'll see that she talks about the 13th Amendment. And the 13th Amendment is so powerful. I want to read it to you. It says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So what that means is you're free unless you've convicted of a crime. But what happens when you're convicted of a crime unfairly or at a disproportionate rate? Because when people then were sent to prison during this time, of this post-antebellum time, they were given convict leasing, which means they basically were still, again, people who were enslaved, people who didn't have their freedom. You look at the great Ava DuVernay documentary 13, and we'll see that people have been in prison at an alarming rate. From 1900 to 1970, 75, prison rate stayed pretty static, nowhere above 350,000 people for the United States. But from 1975 to 1990, that prison population zoomed from 350,000 to over 1 million. And from 1990 to 2000, 2010, where we sit now, 2022, the population range is anywhere from 2.1 to 2.6 million people incarcerated. And guess what? It's our people at a great rate that's being disproportionately incarcerated. And I know you said, hold on, Blacksmith, how are we talking about prison? And it's Black History Month, because you know what? As you hear all about the Benjamins, it's all about the Benjamins because it's still black labor, white wealth. And when I say white, I'm not talking about a color, I'm talking about a power structure. And when I look inside of this, I'm alarmed because in his book, Just Mercy, Brian Stevenson talks about, he said in America, it's better to be rich and guilty than to be poor and innocent. We can say names upon names upon names. Khalil Browder is one that it rings heavy in our heart because this was a person who was beat up by a prison system where it drove him to suicide. When we think about the prison industrial complex, what we think about is how people make the money off of those who are marginalized and ostracized because they won't lock up the real criminals. Well, you say, well, what are you saying? Not to lock up these people who do criminal behavior? No, I'm saying we have to educate them. You know why prisons were created in the first place? One was to punish the people who did the behavior. But jail wasn't supposed to be a punishing place. Being in jail, being in prison was punishing. And then after that, you were supposed to be rehabilitated. Why? Because if you're in a correctional facility, we correct your behavior. So when you come back with the public, you can reintegrate back into society as a law-abiding citizen, as a productive citizen. And 3, it was to deter people from wanting to go say, I don't want this. Even if you got to be corrected, I'm going to be correct from the beginning. So what am I telling them? Because of the 13th Amendment, it still leaves so far of us in slavery. And if we really care about our brothers, what we have to think about is how can we use rules 3 ways. 1, to make sure that our prisons are humane and really are correctional. So when our people come out, they don't recidivate. They're not institutionalized and turned into animals. They can come out not as human beings, but as better human beings. But then also we say, well, these kids are out of control. These people are out of control. Yes, they need to be corrected. But what's more criminal? Their behavior that's really a cry for help, or our structure that's not raising them the way they need to be raised, or a society that allows people to live in impoverished conditions that create this nefarious behavior. So what is the call for today then, Blacksmith? What are you saying? I'm not saying that people don't need to take accountability. We all need to take accountability, all of us, from the government down to the local level, down to families and communities, down to the individual. When I worked at Racine Offender Correctional Facility, I saw men who they told were dumb, who they told were educationally retarded. And I saw these men get high school educationally, the HSEDs. And when they got these HSEDs, you see a different level. I'm not dumb, I just didn't try. And I said, if we can correct people in prison, why can't we correct them earlier? Frederick Douglass said, it's much easier to raise a strong man to heal a broken man. So if we can raise a strong boy, what can we do? We know we put more money in prisons than we do in education. Why don't we flip that? And if the government won't, it's up to the people to do it. So my call for you is to say, how can we help our people? Because we know that they're being put in an unfair slavery, being unfairly prosecuted, put in a situation that creates this type of behavior. We have to do something. The call to action is to help our people and to stop it from ever becoming. We want to prevent the behavior. What can you do to be a part of that clarion call?